And so yet another addition into the hidden history of the African American warrior. You know her by Sojourner Truth. Her real name, Isabella Baumfree. As you might have known, she was born enslaved there in New York City, Ulster County, New York City. There's some things you didn't know about her. What an incredible love story, what an incredible movie this would make. Sometime around 1815, Miss Baumfree, you know her as Sojourner Truth, well, she fell in love with a guy who was also enslaved. His name was Robert. Loved that woman. But Robert was owned by someone else, a guy by the name of Canton or Catlin. Robert's owner forbade him from getting with Miss Baumfree, Sojourner. Why? I'll tell you why. Because he felt that if, in fact, he impregnated her, then she would have a child, and he wouldn't reap the benefit of the profit. You got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, those who were enslaved were looked upon as being like, let's see, it's like breeding dogs or cats. He was the sire, she was the bitch. No, not derogatory, that's how you refer to it. Nevertheless, Robert was quite fascinated with one Miss Baumfree. Sojourner had him hooked, bro. So he made off in the middle of the night just to get one more visit with that sweet little thing. And unfortunately, his master followed him. Not only his master, but his master's son. They found him and beat him to a pulp, bruising and mangling his head and face, bound him, dragged him away. The last poor Miss Baumfree saw of her beloved. Unfortunately, Robert never returned. However, very shortly thereafter, Isabella Baumfree, Sojourner Truth, had a daughter. Her name was Diana. And in 1817, she was forced to submit to the will of her owner, who was named Dumont, to marry an older enslaved man by the name of Thomas. It's alluding to the fact that maybe this was an arranged marriage. John wasn't that into Thomas, but nevertheless, they still had some children. They did. They had 4 children: Peter, James, who died young, Elizabeth, and Sophia. But the oldest was one Diana. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's another part of this story that you're not aware of. Yes, it's a love story, but it's a love story of Robert and Sojourner, and also of her for her children, which is why she became an activist for not only abolition, but for women's rights. You see, Sojourner Truth, as she named herself after running off. Yeah, she ran off. Well, I take that back. She admittedly said she did not run off. Actually, I've got a quote here. Right here. She, let's see here. You see, what had happened was that her enslaver had promised her that he was going to set her free. And actually, New York had already started the process of freeing, abolition of enslavement there in New York City. Well, as fate would have it, she was supposed to have been set free before New York freed everybody. Well, her owner said, no, I can't let you go now. Besides that, you hurt your hand and you weren't able to put out much work, and so therefore I'm due. Well, let me just tell you, Miss Baumfree just was not having that. She was not happy about that at all. She was PO'd. So one night she decided to spin her weight in wool, 100 pounds of wool. She left that on the dresser. And although I said she ran off, she didn't. She said this, I quote, "I did not run off, for I thought that wicked, but I walked off, believing that to be all right." Well, as fate would have it, she was off. However, her children were not, and her enslaver sold off her children, one of which Philip found his way into the South, to which this mother, by now her name is Sojourner Truth, was not having that. She certainly wasn't. She hooked up with a Quaker family that appreciated her freedom. They filed suit in court, and she got little Philip, bro. She was the first, actually, African-American to win the freedom, or win her children's freedom, in the courthouse in the United States. Just thought you should know. Legal battle warrior. Well, there was a confirmation yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. You know, speaking of that, I'm not gonna spend all hour talking about the shenanigans that's taking place, because there's speaking of children, there's something near and dear from one of our listeners that I'm gonna entertain. Only because no one else will. So I'll do it. We're in deep trouble. Well, that was a confirmation I was about to say. The confirmation is that Donald John is, in fact, the Manchurian president.
Confirmed.
That was the litmus test. The sanctions were passed by Congress, sanctions against Russia, to which Donald John signed it reluctantly, wrote a nice little speech here about it. I've got it right here. By the way, I didn't show you the picture of Sojourner Truth. Let me do that. See, that is Sojourner. That's one of her better pictures, by the way. Yeah. Cute little thing, too. In her younger years. You know, she got ill later on and had some problems. So sanctions were passed by Congress. The CAATSA, C-A-A-T-S-A Act, bipartisan bill it's an act that was chastising Russia for their interference. I said bipartisan, overwhelmingly passed. Republicans, Democrats. What did the bill do? I've got it here. What it did was it set out a list of sanctions. In other words, in taking to task some of the oligarchs. Now, you got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, in Russia, you have the very rich and the very poor. The Kremlin has always been dominated by the very rich. And I want you to understand that, because that's exactly where Donald John would like to take this country, to be quite frank. Just look at his cabinet and you'll understand. But be that as it may, so Congress passed an act that called for more sanctions on Russia, and just yesterday, Donald John said, no, we're not going to do it.
Didn't do it.
It's in the hands of those who feel that if the president doesn't follow an act or a bill passed by Congress, that's grounds for impeachment. Well, one could argue that. One could. I mean, if it was President Barack Obama, you know, when Congress passed the laws indicating that just as foreigners or those who came here illegally should be treated a certain way, and the president said, "Well, okay, yeah, we're just not going to enforce the law, and we're not going to enforce that law on a priority." I think that's how he put it. It was like, well, anyway, that's true, and it is the law. However, we're going to focus on getting more of those the worst illegals out, those who break the law. To which many of my oxy-conservative individuals complain. No complaints here, though. So yet again, one Donald John refuses to sanction Russia, refuses to do anything to curtail Russia. I mean, even just yesterday, one of our surveillance planes over the Black Sea came within 5 feet.
5 feet. Too close to comfort.
Of a Russian fighter jet. No, nothing from the Pentagon, nothing from the president. Here's what but by the way, I want you to know, for those of you who think it should be against the law, it isn't, because you see, this Congress, the weak-kneed as they are, wrote into that law also that the president can evaluate whether or not, well, if he thinks it's necessary, if he doesn't think that it's necessary, then at his own discretion, he could just simply not do it. Let's see, I want to get the actual verbiage here. I know I have it there somewhere. I'm going to get to the memo. Hang on. Kind of issues, guys. Here, Russian sanctions. Right. Here is a section here, section 2.3a. No. All right. Yeah, I know I have it here. By the way, this is basically the synopsis of the bill. The bill is rather lengthy, and we just got a synopsis here. I'll find it. I promise you I will. Here it is. Here we go, right here. Still, yes, I've got it. Thank you very much. Still, the bill remains seriously. Oh, this is the president's response when he signed it August 2nd, 2017. He basically criticized the bill. It remains seriously flawed. I built a truly great company worth billions of dollars. He always says that. Prove it.
Right.
Anybody seen the tax return?
No, and you won't. Okay.
That is a big part of the reason I was elected. As president, I can make far better deals with foreign countries than Congress. Nevertheless, inside of this, the president the bill says that the president can, in fact, if in fact there's evidence that that Russia did comply, that the president does not have to institute the sanctions. So now what happened is that you've got a list of oligarchs, to which Vladimir Putin is very upset. Many of those are his buds, his fellow billionaire, trillionaire buds. And
114 of them are.
he doesn't like that at all. So he's suggesting that there's going to be some retaliation just with the listing. The Treasury Department listed it, but the Treasury Department says this. The Treasury documents itself stresses it is not a sanction list, and the inclusion of individuals or entities does not and in no way should be interpreted to impose sanctions on those individuals or entities, Russians or our friends.
Where's the Treasury Department's Adam's apple? It seems to have disappeared.
I'm just saying. It also adds, neither does inclusion on the unclassified list indicate that the U.S. government has information about the individuals involved in aligning activities.
Then where did the list come from?
Right. Yeah, we're supposed to be stupid and not ask that question. Folks, let me just tell you, I'm laughing because I am very afraid for my country. Once again, the ruble now has gone down. It's at 56 now, Ro.
And going?
56 rubles to the dollar. My hypothesis, theory is that Vladimir Putin and Donald John is seeking to drive the value of the dollar down as to the ruble.
56.27 as of today.
I have serious concerns about that, and especially now. I'll tell you why. Because the president's going to give a speech tonight. He's going to tout the economy, right? The economy that President Barack Obama left him. What he's not going to tell you about is what has happened to the deficit and the debt. You know, up until this time, you guys were debt hawks, some of you oxy-conservatives. Nobody's saying a thing about it now, and you should. You really should. You do understand that the debt increase when we can't pay our bills, right? In other words, if you can't pay your credit cards, then you have a debt, right? A budget deficit is when you've said that, okay, I'm going to put this in a budget to spend on bills, but you make more bills. You have more bills than you've set aside for. So you have a budget deficit. The debt is what you actually owe. Listen to me closely. And I've got it right here from the Congressional Budget Office, government accounts. As of 2016, prior to Donald John taking office, the federal debt in trillions was 19.54. You want to know what it is now? We're looking at right at 20 as of December 31st, 20.24. And that's not all. Because of the tax cuts, ladies and gentlemen, whereby the revenues will be lesser. You understand, the revenues from government comes from taxes and fees, okay? And with now Donald John cutting the taxes, which, by the way, is a wonderful thing. Let's see that, okay? We've been here before. We've been here before. And I'm going to tie this back to the ruble, and you'll see what I mean. So, as a result of the tax cuts, which means that the wealthy 1% is now going to not be paying as much in the way of taxes. I mean, significantly, the Congressional Budget Office, a bipartisan group, has indicated, where is it here? I want to get the actual, you know, I always do this. I shuffle everything around, and then I can't find it. Bear with me. I'll be okay. Votes released. No. I'm going to get this. Okay, I'll have to find it later. I'll find it later. I'll apologize for that. It's staring me right in the face. I've got a stack of stuff here. The Congressional Budget Office had suggested that the budget deficit now is going to continue to go down. I don't know if you realize this, ladies and gentlemen, but our budget deficit has been going down ever since President Barack Obama started his second term. In other words, that's the amount of money that we've overspent has begun to come down. It was going down. That's the budget deficit, right? Now, look, that's not good, but it is good when you look at the fact that the budget deficit is going down. Got me? Up until this year. Thanks to Mr. Extravagant, spend more money in 1 year on vacations than President Barack Obama in 8. Our budget deficit has gone up exponentially, and now the Congressional Budget Office is suggesting, with the tax cuts, we're looking at $1 trillion. It is now, it was in November, somewhere hovering around $600 billion. They had projected it would go down to $500 billion, somewhere in there. Now they're suggesting it will spike to $1 trillion by 2018.
Possibly $2 trillion by 2027.
So, and that the reason for that is that you don't have revenue. See, you got to understand, actually conservatives have this concept that, okay, that you cut taxes is going to increase revenue. That's a wonderful concept. It worked. It worked when we were a manufacturing mecca and when technology wasn't as what it is now, folks. I'd love to think that it would. But I'm sorry it just didn't. It didn't work with George W., which is why we had the recession in 2008. Noble effort. Now, here is where I'm tying this together. Already, China has lowered our credit rating to B+, I think, didn't it? Somewhere in there? Or it wasn't Standard & Poor's. I think I read somewhere. As our debt increased, the value of our dollar goes down. You got me? I didn't say the deficit, budget deficit. I'm saying the debt. As it increased, it goes down. Which is why, ladies and gentlemen, I think the ruble is now jumping. I think that is the purpose. I do. A lot of people think that it's a matter of Russia's invasion. I don't believe all that. That's not what this is about.
That was a Dagon Global Credit Rating Bureau rating U.S.'s sovereign rating from A- to triple B+.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So I've got grave concern. So when you watch tonight the president give his speech, you got to ask yourself, where is that going to leave you? You remember when there was this rush by Oxyconservative Talk Radio to buy gold? That too was a sham, by the way. And the reason for that was, oh God, yeah, the dollar is going down. The dollar is going down. Well, I think it is. They're not saying it now, though. The debt has not changed, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I'm just telling you. And the budget deficit now is going up, thanks to the spending. And then there's McCabe, the deputy director, who just resigned. Let me tell you, we had a very bad place. Folks, it's almost like Hotel Rwanda, the movie. You stay close to your radio. With Oxyconservatives and their indoctrination and listening to Limb Bubble and the Hannity Boy, it's just incredible. You guys have got us, you're being indoctrinated. You got to use a little common sense here. You really, really do, folks. The idea that the FBI, and I don't know how many strong they are, 100,000, maybe more. I know a lot of them. Trust me on this. These guys want but one thing, and it's the thing they took an oath to, and that is to defend the Constitution of these United States, folks. I'm going to tell you that. Now, they may have opinions about some of the people they serve, even the president, but trust me on this, these are lawmen. Even J. Edgar Hoover, as wretched as what he is, his whole motivation was, first and foremost, protecting the country. At the time, he thought it was protecting the country against Negroes, like Martin Luther King and the Black Panther Party. But the drive was the country, even to the point of not appreciating the Justice Department, the Attorney General, Robert Kennedy. It was all about the country. I think you have those men still, and it's those men. There's no shadow government. It's just those men who see the country as being more important. Now, that's what drives anyone who works in security. If you think for once that Rip Daniels can walk up to his office in the middle of the night and not be surveilled by Rip Daniels or other individuals, think again. If you think for once that Rip Daniels can travel to Africa, go to especially the CAR that is a mostly Muslim country, and visit the mosque, one of the biggest mosques there with the green dome on it, and somehow or another I am not looked upon and surveilled, think again. And if you think Donald John, his sons, his daughters, or anyone else can fraternize with Russians at the highest level and not be surveilled, think again. You got to expect that, bro.
You should.
It is something that people in security should and would do. And this has been going on a long time for Donald John. And whether you like it or not, it is as it should be, which someone needs to tell Nunes. Now, supposedly there's a memo, and let me explain to you what a memo is. It's an opinion. It's an opinion by the writer, an evaluation of information that you have, and you draw some kind of conclusions. Now, here is the Intelligence Committee, Republican-led Nunes, the chairman. He was the one that said he was going to back off of the Russian thing because, actually, you've got the tape on Nunes. Let people hear what kind of California representative we're talking about here. This is the guy who was like a little yap puppy to Donald John when he was first elected. Want to just run it? Yeah, just run it. You just got to hear, and you won't hear the interviews, but you're going to hear his responses. This is when Donald John said that President Barack Obama had bugged his office, and of course even Nunes had to come back and say, well, no, there was some surveillance of the Trump campaign and the transition, and you got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, this is the guy who said he talked to Vladimir Putin and then denied it. Here's Nunes.
President talking about tapping Trump Tower. That evidence still remains the same. That we don't have any evidence that took place. In fact, I don't believe in the last week of time, the people we talked to, I don't think there was an actual tap of Trump Tower. No, I think I've been very clear. There was no. And as a matter of fact, I've been very clear on this for many weeks now. There was no wiretapping of Trump Tower. That didn't happen. Yes. What I know right now, it looks like incidental collection. We don't know exactly how that was picked up, but we're trying to get to the bottom of it.
The President of the United States says personal communications were collected in incidental collection, not in specific targets.
It's possible. We won't know until we get the information on Friday. I believe it was all done legally.
Stop it right there. So this is Nunes now after being called. You know, he was called out. This is the guy, and then he gets a call and goes to the White House, and the president, he kind of sneaks in, goes into the West Side, sneaks in, and the president comes out, and then he comes back out and goes, "Ooh, well, I don't know, maybe there is something here. They were being surveilled, and then there was some unmasking." Continue.
So first, I recently confirmed that on numerous occasions, the intelligence community incidentally collected information about U.S. citizens involved in the Trump transition. Details about U.S. persons associated with the incoming administration, details with little or no apparent foreign intelligence value, were widely disseminated in intelligence community reporting. Today, I briefed the President on the concerns that I had about incidental collection and how it relates to President-elect Trump and his transition team.
Excuse me, stop it right there. What that was is warning the president that, look, I've had an opportunity to listen to some tapes that they had, the conversations between you and Kirshner and all of these folks with some Russian oligarchs. And I'm just letting you know, for him, it is politics. It is protecting, circling the wagons around his boy. Not even the GOP, because let me tell you, Ronald Reagan's Republican Party would frown upon this big time. But this is all about my guys in, and I've got some promises here, and I've got to circle the wagons and protect this guy. Has nothing to do with the country. There's nothing patriotic about it at all. He rushed over to tell Donald John what he had seen, and I just want to let you know, this is what they've got. And then he rushes out of the White House and gives an interview. Continue.
Number one, I wasn't sneaking on. It wasn't at night.
Yeah, right.
It was in the middle of the sun was out.
Yeah.
And I actually stopped and talked to several people along the way.
Sure,
Many foreign dignitaries were there. Some I recognized. I said hello, had conversations with them. So nobody was sneaking around. All it was just a place where I had to go to be able to review this information.
Yeah, right. And it was the White House. They had to go to the White House to review the information there. Yeah, right.
He had to go.
He didn't have to go to the FBI office. He did not. He didn't have to.
He was compelled to go.
Folks, the only thing I'm saying to you is, come on, let's not be stupid about this. Even if you support the president, this is shady stuff here. So Nunes now releases a memo, again, an opinion, based upon the intelligence reports. He wants the president to declassify parts of it so that you Americans will be privy to it. The president said he'd go ahead and do it. However, the same committee and Nunes, the chairman, says he's not going to release the Democratic memo. Why not?
Why not?
He blocked that.
Why? Okay, so that means that there's something there as opposed to, unmasking folks on the Democratic side as well.
Well, I mean, the point is that if you're beyond reproach, you just simply lay all the cards out there. So what is it supposed to say? Well, it's supposed to suggest that maybe McCabe had some ulterior motives regarding Donald John. And you know what? I'm going to say this. Yes, he should. He should have some ulterior motives and should be very, very concerned because this is the guy who said this. Where is it? Right there. Thank you. Right there.
I have no relationship with him. I do have a relationship with him. I have no relationship with him. He has said nice things about me over the years. I remember years ago, he said something many years ago. He said very nice things about me, but I have no relationship with him. When I went to Russia with the Miss Universe pageant, he contacted me and was so nice. I have no relationship with Putin. I don't think I've ever met him. I never met him. I was in Russia. I was in Moscow recently, and I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer. I have never spoken to him on the phone, no.
And so now there is some suggestion that somehow or another the dossier is the reason for the investigation. And trust me on this, I don't doubt that Donald John has been surveilled going back to 2013 and beyond, as he should be. As Rip Daniels should be, as Hillary Clinton should be, as anyone else who is having high-level meetings with a hostile government.
Definitely. Makes me feel safe.
I mean, folks, it's just, trust me, this is, and the idea that there's some questions here makes me question those individuals who circle the wagons around this guy. He's the only guy that doesn't want the investigation. So you've got the Intelligence Committee doing investigations, and it's all Republican, by the way. All of these committees are run by Republicans. And some of them, no. There's a big old fat fly in the milk. So, I could go on and on with Nunes from January 2015 all the way to, March 30th. And we might. But for me, we're waiting to see. The president's got 5 days to release the memo. Release the Kraken. Go right ahead. Let me just tell you, all of it is orchestrated. It's orchestrated for the sake of his show tonight. The State of the Union show that's now become a reality show. See, all of this is what the president does. This is his forte. This is his background. He is P.T. Barnum. He is now the reality show guy, and it's all about controlling the news, and that's why he's so effective with the tweets. I'm sorry. And so now we released this. There's a memo. I wish the memo was released. If you think Nunes come up with this by himself, think again. So now that takes us off of the fact. That, all right, well, look, Mueller is still moving at warp speed on this.
Despite the deputy director.
Absolutely. I don't know if you saw the stuff that we mentioned yesterday about the Deutsche Bank and the $130 million that was loaned to one Donald John by Russian oligarchs. Folks, you're going to follow the money. And you know who said this? It wasn't Rip Daniels. You know who said this? Bannon.
Steve Bannon?
Steve Bannon said this. It's money laundering. I want you to pull it up. It's quoted in the book. It's as unpatriotic as it comes. And if by chance you're circling, you're tying your wagon to this guy, I want you to ask yourself, how patriotic is it? You need to back out of listening to Russian radio because, trust me, it's not serving you well. It just isn't. This guy, our guy, has chosen not to follow the Congress with sanctions against Russia. Why? One has to ask. Well, I think you got to understand, he had to show Congress evidence, or supposed to show Congress evidence, that they are complying. There's been no evidence, not according to Congress. No one has come forward and said and indicated as much.
There's a list, though.
There's a list. You're going to publish a list. And, of course, needless to say, he wanted McCabe to resign. I mean, this guy's been a target. Not that I just know McCabe and like McCabe. He was a deputy director under Comey, and anyone who says, listen to me, the idea that a president would ask someone, who did you vote for? Does that not tell you what is his priority? So who did you vote for? Oh, okay. And to which McCabe indicated he did not vote. By the way, I was very shocked to learn that many people who work in law enforcement don't vote. Even at that level. They don't have time, and they don't want, they support the Constitution. I still have some opinions. The opinions they typically have of an elected official is whether he's a criminal or not, whether he's acting criminally, whether he's acting with no regard for the Constitution that FBI agent has sworn to respect and protect. That's what this is about. Anybody notice gas prices going up? Wonder why?
Good question.
I'm just throwing it out there. All right, folks, got a lot to cover, short period of time, and got another issue here involving family. Let me ask you, if in fact your son or daughter had kids and wanted to move in with you and you only had 2 bedrooms, would you let them? What would you expect for them to do for you? It's more to it. Hang on, we'll be back.
The Jackson Advocate newspaper has been the voice of black Mississippians since 1938. The Jackson Advocate wants to come into your home each week and keep you informed.